Hey everybody, Nick Belisi here from the Paradise Collection. This is our first live that we're doing. Every Tuesday, we are going to be going live to be doing healing and stuff like that. Tonight, I am joined by my best friend Stormy. So, Stormy, say hi.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, so tonight we are going to talk about a few things, our plans for the future. We're doing it today on Wednesday. Usually we would be doing it on Tuesday, but yesterday I had something come up, so today we're going to make up for it. So on our first thing today, we're going to do Tuesday healings. That's going to be our new thing every Tuesdays, where we're going to talk about different topics. Our very first topic that we're going to be talking about is borderline personality disorder. It's a very big theme in the book, and for the people who don't know about it, we're going to talk about it a little bit. On Thursdays, we're going to go chapter for chapter on each book. We have the 2 books that we're going to go through. And in each book, I'm going to break down basically what happens in each chapter and any Easter eggs and, things to tell you guys how I came up with it and all of that. And then Fridays, I'll do the updates as far as the 3rd book is going. I'm on chapter 2 right now. And so far, things are going good. A lot of exciting things coming. We're going to do giveaways and stuff like that. And we got a lot of different things planned. So make sure you join us at this time on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we're going to dive right into it. So, to start off, basically, the textbook definition of borderline is, as the DSM-5 describes, borderline personality disorder is a pervasive pattern of instability of interpersonal relationships, self-image, and affects and marked impulsivity, beginning in early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts. So it's just a vague definition of, what it is. But, there's 9 different symptoms. In order for you to be diagnosed, you need to have a persistentness of 5 of them. So for tonight's thing, we're not going to dive into all 9 of them. We're going to do it 2 by 2, and each week, we will definitely go into it in more detail. So the very first one that they talk about is a fear of abandonment. It's one of the most common ones that you hear when you talk about borderline personality disorder, and basically what it is it's people with BPD. They're often terrified of being abandoned or left alone. Even something as innocuous as a loved one arriving home late from work or going away for the weekend may trigger an intense fear. This can prompt frantic efforts to keep the other person really close to them. You may beg them, cling them, start unnecessary fights, track their movements, or even physically block the person from leaving. Unfortunately, this behavior tends to have the opposite effect and actually drives people away. So, with that being said, the first thing we're going to talk about is as someone who has borderline, it can be an overwhelming feeling, especially if you are, thinking that your loved one could be cheating on you, or lying to you, or hiding something from you. It's like an overabundance of paranoia that comes over you, and in the moment, it feels like it's real, and, it may not always feel that way, but or it may not always be true, but, in the moment, it definitely can feel that way. It's not just in relationships, as I'm sure Stormy can vouch for. It happens in friendships as well, too, and, it could be a little difficult to deal with. I mean, Stormy, what could you speak to that?
I would, being someone that knows somebody with borderline and has been in your life for 5+ years, there's been some times that I've, before I actually started looking into borderline personality disorder, started researching it, started trying to understand why you were doing those things. So yeah, it's a little bit tough, but if you're willing to understand and learn and work with that person, it definitely makes the relationship or the friendship a lot easier.
Right. So Absolutely, I completely agree with you. You know what I mean? Obviously, from feeling it from the driver's perspective, you know what I mean? It's a whole different entity, and you know, I appreciate you understanding that and always being there through all those ups and downs with that. Um, you know, it's tough. It's tough. Me personally, I was in a very rough relationship with my kid's mom, and you know, there was a lot of cheating and stuff going on in that. So I felt that not only was I paranoid, I mean, I was obviously finding out about the things that were going on, but you know what I mean? It's that constant fear where, you know, you don't know what's real. You're almost feeling like you're being gaslighted all the time because, I mean, sometimes you can't even tell. Like, am I being cheated on? Am I being lied to? Like, you really don't know. And sometimes, even when the evidence is in front of you, you're so afraid of that person leaving you, even though you know it's a bad thing, that you try to pretend like it didn't happen. That you try to pretend that, no, I must be imagining this. It can't be. Like, even when it's blatantly in front of you. So, um, you know what I mean? Like you have to be able to take time. Obviously, you know, there's steps that you could work, especially with dialectical behavioral therapy, also known as DBT, which can teach you coping mechanisms to, you know, deal with that fear of abandonment and to, you know, help yourself rather than just jump to conclusions or, you know, try to weed out what's toxic and then be okay with letting go of certain things. You know what I mean? Because you can't be in a relationship where, you know what I mean, it's not healthy for either party and you have to let it go. So, you know, that is basically the fear of abandonment part of BPD. It's whether it's perceived or whether it's actually happening. You know what I mean? You're trying to just stay in it no matter what because you're so afraid of being alone or driving that person away. The second thing that we're going to get into tonight, the second symptom of BPD, is unstable relationships, which kind of goes hand in hand with the fear of abandonment. At least in my case, it did. People with BPD, they tend to have relationships that are really intense and sometimes short-lived. You may fall in love really quickly, believing that each new person is the one who's going to make you feel like you're whole and you know that you're the greatest thing in the world, but you're ultimately going to be disappointed because your relationships either seem perfect or they seem completely horrible. You may feel like you have emotional whiplash because of your rapid swings of idealization and devaluation, from anger to love to hate. It's just constant back and forth. I mean, it's not just intimate relationships, it's, you know, friend relationships, coworker relationships. It could be many things. I mean, the easiest way to explain it is, you know, you could meet somebody and you could think, you know, this is like the most incredible person in the world. Like, I've been waiting for them my entire life. And, um, you know, all of a sudden, what winds up happening is they do something, even if it's just so small, like they could do something small. Maybe they, you know, looked at you the wrong way. Maybe, you know, or maybe you thought they were cheating, or maybe you thought they were talking smack behind your back, and then all of a sudden they immediately in your brain turn into somebody that, you know, you don't want to be around anymore, and they're not so great anymore. And you know, like it's like black and white thinking. That's a huge thing with BPD. It's not being able to see the gray area in a situation. You know what I mean? It's basically that, like, you feel this person is amazing or this person's like terrible. Like, it's very difficult.
I've been both.
Yeah.
So I do understand. So
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, especially because like in our friendship and stuff like that, we've been through a lot together as far as you know, life and such. And I, you know, as much as I've been ashamed of it and stuff like that, in the moment, you know what I mean? There's been times where I was having that black and white thinking and not being exactly, you know, the person I should have been. Like, I shouldn't have been, I was being a bad friend. I mean, more or less. And there were many times, you know what I mean? I felt like, you know, like I knew like I was ruining the friendship, like in the moment, but it felt so real, you know what I mean? Whatever the case may be. And it could have been just like small things. And I just turned them into, you know, bigger things. So,
And that's what I think is good about our relationship is I'm able to bring that gray in there. I'm able to, you know, looking from the outside in, knowing when you're having episodes or when you're triggered or, those types of things do help to where even if you're in that state, I'm not going to overreact because I know it'll pass.
Right. And I mean, that took years.
A while.
Yeah.
Took a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone out there is struggling with someone that has BPD in a relationship, just don't give up on them. Just work through things, and eventually it does work itself out and you don't have those issues anymore.
Yeah. I mean, you know, especially like in a friendship and stuff like that, you learn boundaries.
Yeah.
You definitely learn boundaries. And I mean, I could say personally, like, Stormy's not afraid to call me out on my stuff, like when I'm acting irrational. Like, it's just gotten to that point. And you need somebody, you need that rock in your life to be able to say, hey, you know, your logic of thinking is just like way out of whack and you need to stop. And I may get mad at her that day. I might be like, she has no idea what she's talking about. Like, I don't need to listen to this. But I mean, ultimately, when the swing passes and stuff like that, you look back on it and you're like, okay, yeah, I probably should have listened. But you know what I mean? It's all a learning thing. And it's good that, you know, we can get together in things like this, like whether it be through reading the book and watching Stella's journey or Gwen's journey in the second book. Like, it's good to see that, because putting it on paper and having, especially this mental illness, like recognized and, you know, brought out into the light so people could talk about it. Because if you look it up, I mean, there's a lot of times most psychologists don't want to even touch it. They don't want to touch it because of the swings and the constant devaluation or revaluation, where you sit there and you say, you know, like, oh, my therapist is so great, like they're doing so well for me. And then the next time you go there, maybe they say something wrong. Or like in my case, there's a couple of times where they would talk about themselves like a lot, or they would talk about their grandkids instead of like, well, I'm paying you. Like, why are you sitting here for 45 minutes talking about you? So, you know what I mean? It just seems wasteful at that point. And then you're just like, well, I don't want to do this anymore. And you quit. So you're not exactly doing it. You're not exactly going through the steps. I mean, especially, you know, when it comes to DBT, that's a long program that you have to be involved in and, you know, be committed to, like doing the program one-on-one sessions. And then on top of that, doing like the group sessions and stuff like that. Like, it can be very time constraining. And when I first got diagnosed back in 2012 as a part of my discharge in the military, you know, they wanted to do like background checks and stuff. They wanted to see, you know, when you're getting out, they want to make sure that there's not something down the line that you're going to say, well, listen, I had this problem. They never addressed it. Now we need to talk like repercussions. So they go through a battery of tests and stuff like that. And like my biggest thing was like I self-harmed a lot when I was younger. So obviously I have scars, and they saw that along with things from my past and what was going on in the time, because I was going through a divorce at that point in time when I was being separated. So with all that, you know, they made me go through therapy at least 3 times a week. You know, it was one group, one with a different counselor, and then one with the Navy's own counselor. And I did that for 2 months. And the conclusion was at the end of that they came up with that I had borderline. So that was the first time I was diagnosed. But I mean, I've seen many therapists since then, you know, for different reasons and such, and have been diagnosed 2 more times. So I've been diagnosed sort of 3 times in the last 11 years. And it's a tough diagnosis. It really is. People tend to hear that and they just don't want anything to do with it. So, I mean, it just depends on how you look at it. It really depends about the person too, because there's so many of us that have it, and we all handle it differently. We all have our different quirks. Some people have substance abuse problems. Some people have self-harm problems. There's just so many different things about it. And, you know, my whole thought with this and why I wanted to start doing this on the Tuesdays is because there was a good handful of people that when I wrote the first book, The Souls of Paradise, that reached out to me, and I wasn't expecting it. They reached out to me and they talked about how it awakened a lot of demons within them, but at the same time, it made them feel like they weren't as judged. It made them feel like that they could open up more, and that some of the things that I wrote about that they related to. And I mean, that in itself is just worth everything that's going on. The fact that somebody could reach out and say those things, you know, mold with the character and feel good about it, and just know that your voice is heard. Know that somebody who else suffers with BPD is like, that we're bringing light to it. It's going to take a long time, and obviously I'm not going to be the only person to do it. There's so many content creators out there that are talking about it, but you're starting to see more and more of it, which is good, because then we can all help each other. I mean, that's what the greatest part about all this is. It's an avenue to reach out and help people who are struggling with it. You don't have to struggle alone. That, maybe you read the book or something like that, and maybe instead of like self-harming or something like that, you think like, what, there's another avenue. There's another way out of this. So, I mean, that was a lot of the reason why, this is going on, and why we wanted to give it a shot with the Tuesday healing and stuff like that. And, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And, it is what it is. But, I want to be able to have that avenue. So if there is anyone out there that's, struggling or something like that, they can certainly reach out to me, private message, and, we can chat, because things do get better. It may take time, but like things do get better. And, you'll see too, when we do our next live, which will be tomorrow, you'll see as we break down the very first book and go through it chapter by chapter, and I tell you the reasons, the inside of how the book came to be and the things that occurred during the book, and the inserts from my own life that are placed in it, followed by with, behind the scenes stories and such. You'll see how those terrible things actually wound up turning into great things. So, we're going to cut it short tonight. We just wanted to give this a test run and get some feedback, reach out to you guys, let you know what we're going to be doing going forward. We will be back tomorrow at the same time at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here. So make sure you keep an eye out for that. And I'm really looking forward to doing more of these videos with you guys. And I really hope that you enjoyed what we did so far. So I hope you all have a good night, and thank you.
Thank you, everyone.